All right, everybody, come on in. Hello, hello. All right, everybody, come on in, come on in. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome back to another episode of the Wives Club. Happy Valentine's Day. Celebrating Valentine's with you. Hopefully, you are watching the replay and you are not watching me live because you are out loving and being loved by your Valentine. But if you don't have a Valentine, I will be your Valentine tonight. We celebrated last night. So, wanted to react to the latest Kevin Samuel stream. I think it's a couple of weeks old. Usually I come on here with you all about once a month and react to Kevin Samuels, but like he always used to say, where are my manners? For anybody new here, hi, I'm Maggie, the substitute teacher. You may know me for my cooking channel. What you may not know about me is that in 2021, I booked a session with the late, great Kevin Samuels. And it wasn't for me. I like to say that I am happily average, emphasis on the happily. But I always used to get convicted whenever he would ask, where are the older women to teach the young? You all know I'm a boy mom, married for 10 years to my college sweetheart. But I always like to start with admitting that, I didn't get it right the first time. I am a reformed modern woman, and even though I was raised traditionally, I think college and corporate America, which we're going to talk about tonight, college and corporate America had me putting some things out of order. So unfortunately, the marriage ended in divorce. Hello, DJ Kosher. Thank you so much for being here. The marriage did end in divorce, and then life brought me back to my first love, someone I grew up with, and we've been together over 15 years, and I got it right second time around. So when I had that session with Kevin Samuels in 2021, I always used to get convicted whenever he would ask, where are the older women to teach the young? And I heard myself and I saw myself in a lot of younger women. And I wanted to do my part to help. And what we started doing with his permission and his blessing, he actually came up with the name The Wives Club. And we would meet in his Patreon privately. This is before I had my channel or anything. And when he would go live on YouTube and Instagram, we would get together and we would react to his content from our own lived experience as former wives, as current wives, and as future wives. Because Kevin always used to say, being a wife is a mindset, and you need to be a wife before you are found. And my man, Mr. President, says, you need to be a wife before you're married. You need to be a mother before you have children. That means, ladies, if we want a specific outcome, we need to be walking that out right now and not wait until our hair is on fire and we're there and it's like, oh, someone come rescue us, which circles back to today's episode. So I believe this one is called Work or Wife. Are you hot enough for the soft life? And you all know Kevin had his polarizing titles, but he forced us to have a conversation with ourselves, which I am hoping to do him justice and continue. So sit back and relax. I'm going to take my time. I always like to bring you all in the conversation with me. We've got Don't Be Anxious Over Anything, saying, hey, thank you so much for being here. I see you all on TikTok. Thank you all for coming in. And I see you all on Instagram. Captain Morgan is not so lucky. We wish you better luck next time. I understand. Drea says, what happened to the other ladies who were part of the Wives Club? So there were 4 of us. It was me who started, and then Avi joined. And then after Avi joined, Lisa joined, and then after Lisa joined, Hermisha joined. So if you all have been with us from the beginning, you remember the 4 of us. Hello, happy Valentine's Day. Avi still has her channel. Long story short, everybody stepped aside for their own personal reasons. It's a lot to do this and maintain, family and responsibilities and work. And I understand that. Avi still has her channel on YouTube. Lisa had some health challenges, and she shared that with you all. You all know that she was going through treatment, and her husband actually asked her to take a step back because it was just too demanding, and she needed to prepare. I think it was for an organ transplant, and then her Misha scheduling conflicts. But that's how it began. I'm still here if you all will have me. And I do want to continue to do my part. So you all can sit back and relax. Feel free to ask your questions. Happy to answer them. And yeah, we're going to go through. So if you see me looking over here, I have my notes from Kevin's content, most recent content. The family puts out content about once a month. And I listen to it, take notes, and then just now continue here on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook with what I started back in 2021. And you love it here. I love having you all here. And happy Valentine's Day. Okay, so let's get it started. Drea says, I waited for you to promote your classes, but I never saw anything interesting. So I try to be really respectful of this channel and this content, the Wives Club, to keep it very focused to responding to Kevin Samuel streams. You all may know if you watch my other content, and I'm Maggie, the substitute teacher, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. I make food and femininity content. We are currently in the last session of not the Wives Club. This is the Wives Club, the finishing school for the modern woman. But you can go to teachablemomentswithmaggie.com. Everything is available on demand. But I just turned 50 last year, and Lucy and I are going to be taking a step back so we can prioritize our golden years with our men. All right. But yeah, I have a lot of going on, travel and a lot of stuff, but I really try to focus on reacting to Kevin's content here. All right. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Let us begin. So the first note that I have here, Kevin asked the audience, do you want to work or do you want to be a wife? And this is an interesting presumption. It assumes or presumes that it's either or. And, I work in tech. I've told you all that. I worked when I was married. My mom worked. Both of my parents came to America for education and immigrated here. And I watched both of my parents raise a family and work. And that is actually the majority of us. And I think maybe with social media and having access to seeing the lives of the rich and famous, we have an assumption, an incorrect assumption of what marriage really is. And we'll talk a little bit about that. You can absolutely work and be married. As a matter of fact, for most of us, wives either maybe need to work or want to work, or your husband is asking you to work. The key is, ladies, is that you want to work in a way that keeps your marriage and your relationship as a priority. And we're going to talk a lot about that in this episode. I was former executive and all of that. I remember when the pandemic happened, it kind of sat me down, and my man was like, you know what, I like you better at home. And I remember kind of getting offended, got this big degree and working on a team and, $1 million budgets and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, does he know who I am? But I had already had one failed marriage, and I did not want to repeat that mistake. And so I really had to listen to him. And the type of work that I do now, much more flexible, able to work from home, keeps me in a more relaxed state, which really helps with my femininity. All right. So he's asking the question, and I think where he was going with this is that, unfortunately, a lot of women, especially in our community today, think that you can have both, or you can have one and then the other, meaning you can work, you can have happy hour and girls trips and hot girl summer and spend all the money that you want on you. And then when you're wore out, then you can find a man to take over and you can just sit up and be a pampered princess. That's not how this happens, ladies. And like he said, that's why we have a lot of 30 and 40-year-old women that are single because they didn't take it seriously in the beginning when you have the best opportunity to get what you want. All right. So, Kevin was talking about in this episode, some women will say, well, if I have to work, why even get married? And this circles back to the fallacy and the misinformation that a lot of us have as modern women with what marriage is. Now, look, every marriage is unique and different, and you need to work out what's best for you with your husband. However, being a wife is a role, and Kevin Samuel said that often. And Mr. President told me this. I told our students this recently. Whatever Bible you believe in, God created the earth, He created man, and gave man dominion and a job and to subdue everything and be the caretaker, if you will, of God's creation. Then God created woman, meaning a man's purpose came before the woman was created. So that means our husband's purpose is going to be priority over us. As a wife, we are a helpmate. We are a support system. We need to identify how we can be useful to the man that we want, help him achieve his goals, and that's how we succeed as well. If you as a woman think that you're going to meet a man, especially in your later years, and he is going to prioritize you over everything that he's already been doing because that's what attracted you to him, you are wrong and you will remain single. We got Condembia here. Thank you so much for being here. I'm glad you still have your wrench. I know StreamYard made some changes, so if I have any moderators in the house, let me know if anything's changed for you. He says, apology for the interruption. Is there a reason why super chats are disabled on your other channel? Which channel? Let me know which channel you're watching on, y'all. StreamYard has made some changes with how it talks to YouTube. So please let me know. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up with the settings, but thank you so much for being here. Okay. So again, the role of a wife is to be a support system. We are to be a helpmate, all right? If you think you're going to be 50-50 partners, wait until you get my age. Women even younger than me, 35, they're tired. That's when you all start thinking about, you know what, maybe I need to find somebody after you've been doing it on your own for 10, 15, 20 years. It's not going to work, all right? So let's get over ourselves thinking that we're better off doing it alone if I have to work anyway. It's so much better if you are going to work alongside your husband and build something that will last. Because unfortunately, ladies, if we're very honest with ourselves, oftentimes, let's say we get these big degrees and we go work and we do whatever we want to do for 10, 15 years. We don't have much to show about it. All right. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for telling me that. Yeah, I don't know what happened over there, but thank you for the $5. I need to take a look at StreamYard. I think there's some settings in there and I don't want to mess with it while I'm live, but I appreciate it so much. Condemning one of my day ones. Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you so much for letting me know. Okay, let us continue on. So the next thing that Kevin talked about in his monologue was that a lot of modern women are offended by and find a reason to be insulted by being called average. I always tell you all I am happily average. However, women today, especially in our community, seem to think that being exceptional is the only way to succeed. And Kevin said that later in the stream. He said something like, you can still win being average. It's basically like graduating with C's. And I know we have this idea that we are supposed to be exceptional. And he had a really good rationale for it, meaning sometimes women think, well, I'm asking for so much from a man. I'm asking for him to take over my debt, sit me down somewhere, put me in a cul-de-sac in the suburbs. So I have to at least believe and tell him that I am worth that. I don't know. You tell me. So in this case, let me see if I can make some changes on the fly. In this case, ladies, there's nothing wrong with being average. Most of us are average, all right? So let's go ahead and save that. Okay. Let's continue on. Especially in our community, ladies, we are behind. And you all know I don't really have much for you in the way of statistics. But if you look around, most women in our community are not getting married and going off and creating their families. We have this mindset that we can do it all by ourselves. We're better off alone. We don't need a man. And so we are behind. I think Black women are getting married at a fourth of the rate. And, you might say, well, why should I care? Well, what that means is that not only are we already behind because of what's happened to get us to this point, we're not helping ourselves advance. And we need strong families. We need strong families to build an unshakable community, which helps society. And those families start with husband and wife. But if we can't be good girlfriends, good support systems, if we can't be good women to our men, we're just going to continue to be at each other. Rough House is here. Thank you so much. He says, good commentary. I appreciate that. Condemnia says, water is average and we all need water. Absolutely. That's a great analogy. We all drink water. We all breathe air. There's nothing exceptional about it, but we need it for life. And I think I figured out the settings that I need to do moving forward. So thank you for letting me know. Okay. So moving on, in his monologue, Kevin said a lot of modern women, especially in our community, go and get these big degrees. But ladies, one of the things that I think we have to do a better job at, because one of the women that called in, she made this mistake. She was $80,000 in debt, and Kevin told her, that's your problem. Ladies, you can be financially unattractive to the man that you want. And it's hard, but it's true. Why should a man build himself and then take on a woman who is going to be a liability and not an asset? Remember what I said. We are, if you want to be married, we are to be a helpmate. We are to be a support system. So if you're coming with extra baggage, you haven't taken care of yourself, you have, children from a previous relationship, you have all this debt. Remember, most women, unfortunately, they don't look at marriage as we're going to do this as a team. They look at marriage as kind of like, he's going to rescue me from myself. So when you go and you get a big degree and then you work for 10, 15 years, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but Kevin explained it that to me, I've heard it before, but it's so true, ladies. We are announcing to the world how we can do it, how we are independent, and we are built to work alongside our men. So it's going to be a very hard sell once you have sunk your time, your best years into, that big degree, and then, the debt that probably comes along with it. And then you've been out here working. It's going to be very hard to tell a man, you know what, no, I really want to be a wife and a mother, because nothing that you've done demonstrates that. We have to realize that, ladies, men look at the track record of what we've done, myself included, especially if you're going to come to man after your prime years. Now you're 30, 35, 40, and you're trying to say, I can give you the family and home life that a woman 10, 15 years your junior could do. It's not true. So just be very careful about that. I think one of the things that's wonderful about us being women, we are really good in the moment. One of the things that's very wonderful about men, I love this about my man, the foresight that they have. But ladies, that can trip us up. If we just stay, I'm doing this right now just because I don't really have a reason to, how is that going to play out 10, 15 years down the future when you're my age? Yeah. Planet says don't do only fools. That's so far off of the mark of a wife if you do that. Good luck to you. I can't help everybody. All right. So let us continue on. So often, the next thing Kevin said in this episode, in this monologue, women just have this fantasy that I want to work for my husband's company. There may be, men that have their own business, but ladies, what you have to understand that most of us have jobs. Some of us have careers, but it's even rarer that a man would be an entrepreneur to the level that you can work for him. There are examples of that, but you don't bet the farm on that. You don't hitch your wagon to that. I think we need to do a better job as far as being realistic, what our options are. Now, let's say you have a man, you meet him young, he's in medical school or dental school or something like that. He's driving a truck and he has a plan on his own that he wants to own the dental practice, or he wants to run his own trucking company or HVAC or whatever. Then especially taking advantage of your youth, if you make yourself useful to a man like that, when he has that established, then of course he's going to want to have you as part of the family business. But just going through life pretending that one day there's going to be somebody who's going to hire you and you have no idea what that looks like, that's not very wise. All right, let us continue on. Over my tea too much. All right. So the next question Kevin asked in this monologue, and ladies, ask yourself, he says, why don't you want to work? And this is a hard one, ladies. We have to be very honest. So ask yourself, you can say it here or not. Probably just keep this one to yourself. If you have demonstrated to the world that you can go to school, that you can get this degree, that you can take out a loan, that you can graduate, that you can get that big piece of paper on the wall. I know I have 2 of them. And then one day you wake up and say, I don't want to do this anymore. Why is that? And I'll be very honest. I think, ladies, there might be a little bit of laziness in there. But I think what really happens is we realize too late that we are not built for the long haul like a man is. At my age, women my age and older, ask yourself, how many 50-plus-year-old women do you know are still burning the candle at both ends? What I'm seeing, like I said, women even younger than me are starting to look for ways to slow it down, to work from home. They're not chasing it like they were before. But unfortunately, those before years were their prime years. And then more often than not, they met a man that they could have had a life with, but they dismissed him because they thought they were better than him. So ask yourself, if you don't want to work, why? And the reason why we need to ask ourselves these questions, ladies, is because the men are going to ask. And I saw that brilliantly in this episode. Kevin did a really good job of staying on task and asking those uncomfortable questions. And ladies, I'm telling you, he wasn't being mean. That is how men communicate. If they ask you a direct question, they expect a direct answer. So you need to be prepared to give one. All right. So don't get caught deer in the headlights. Make sure you've thought this stuff through. All right. So now moving on to the part of the monologue where Kevin, had his expertise as an image consultant. He said, are you hot enough to stay home? I want to talk about that, especially as an average woman. Now, here's the thing. The point that Kevin was trying to get at, and I know that type of question kind of, can be like offensive. What do you mean, am I hot enough? Ladies, when we are asking a man to basically support us 100%, or 80% or whatever it is. What is that man getting in return? And the amount of men that are able to retire their wives early or completely, it's a very limited window of men. And they're usually, like he said in this episode, 35 plus. So these are the men, like Kevin used to say, they have options. And so ask yourself, why should he choose you? Why should he overlook all of his options to pick you? Now, if you have good reason, absolutely lead with that. I'll give you all one thing that all of us have. It's youth, but that's something that we have for a brief moment in time. The reason I have Mr. President is because I was there before he became Mr. President. We grew up together. I knew him young. I was ready. He wanted to go be a young man, and life brought us back together. But when you are an average woman, like most of us are, and I will say this about myself, I don't expect to go out on the market and carry the same value to another man that is a stranger to me. There are so many other more beneficial choices for him. So when Kevin says, are you hot enough? Do you bring enough value to the man that you want to offset what you're asking for? And Kevin led with image because, he had his rating scale. But it's true. Most of the time, and you'll see this, women that do have I don't want to use the word luxury because being at home, it's a benefit, but it is a full-time job, ladies. But the women that you see that have that option, usually married young, or they used their beauty to get what they wanted and get out of the dating game. When you try to carry this leverage for a decade plus, collecting trips and trinkets and things that are going to be useless when you're my age, then you have nothing to show for it. All right. So Kevin said in this episode, back in the day, most women would have been married by pick an age. I was married at 25. And I remember thinking then, and I still believe, that I beat the buzzer. Literally, I wanted to be married before I was closer to 30 than I was 20. This was my college boyfriend. I met him at 18. He was the only boyfriend I had in college. We married after. But that is the time, ladies. Kevin said it in this episode. When you're in high school, college, or those first one or two jobs right after college, those are going to be the windows of time that you're going to have the most access, and I'll say the most leverage to get the outcome that you want. Once you hit your 30s, like all of us settle into this routine. You go to work and you come home. You go to work and you come home. Your ship has sailed. You're not going to be as competitive with a woman that has not worn herself out with life. And that's just the truth, all right? Kevin said that's why we have so many women that are 30 and plus that are busybodies. And I see this with people close to me, and it's sad, but Mr. President says it this way, all of the energy that we have, ladies, instead of giving our best years to, companies that are great, but please believe they will replace you as soon as it's needed, or having all these experiences. And I love experiences, but I'm doing them at this point in my life. There was a time when I was raising with my husband, two boys. Now they're 18 and 16, but all this energy that we have should be used to help build a family, build something that's bigger than us, build a legacy that will last. Because I'm telling you, when I clean up and I see journals and notes and all this stuff from projects that I've done, I work in tech. I look at all this stuff. Some of these companies don't even exist anymore. These systems are outdated. They've been bought and sold. That's just the world that we live in. And I shudder at the thought of thinking, if that's all that I've done in all these 20-something years, that would be really empty for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but I have heard women say, and you see women just finding stuff to do, got to be out, got to be outside, got to stay on top of the latest gossip, just doing all of that because the silence is deafening for them. And when you're alone with your own thoughts, all of us think of another year has passed, another Valentine's Day, another holiday. Am I making progress? Am I making any progress at all? Or am I just treading water and just watching life pass me by? All right. So ask yourself, ladies, if all the busyness that you're doing, are you doing everything and nothing? Or are you actually accomplishing something that will last? All right. So like Kevin said, you can graduate with a C. You can be an average woman and have a wonderful life. Most of us, most of our families, most of our parents were average. There's nothing wrong with the nurse being with the truck driver or a small town girl being with the small town guy who grows up and, becomes something amazing together. All right. So let's go into a little bit of statistics, which was Kevin's specialty. And I don't want to mess this up, you all. Usually I just speak from my own lived experience because I don't study this stuff. Kevin was a true scholar. But I think he said like 50 years ago, 1/3 of mothers worked or needed to work. And, I've heard people say, oh, it's the economy. I've heard all kind of things about it. But, honestly, ladies, if you look at most women that stay at home, it is a sacrifice. Oh, Condemnia coming in with the $10. He says, what words do you have for women who find themselves getting complacent and comfortable to the point where they take for granted the man that does pay all of the significant bills in the household? Yeah, this one for me is tragic and terrifying when you see women who have the benefit of a husband and they take it for granted. Ladies, I would ask yourself, if you have a man, and nothing's perfect, but I want you to take a moment and imagine what it would be like if he was gone. If you had everything on your back, on your shoulders, because it could be another way. I think about that sometimes, and that's what keeps me humble. And I tell Mr. President all the time, I'm the luckiest girl in the world. Thank you so much for taking me out and spending, ridiculous amount of money for an overpriced meal just to celebrate, a day. Thank you for pressure washing the house and all the stuff that you do, changing the oil, stuff that I don't have to do. I hope that these ladies who have taken life for granted realize that before it's too late. Unfortunately, some of us, life has to humble us. And when you see that man happy with somebody else, then you wake up. But don't let it get to that point. Really think about, go through your whole day, your whole week, your month, and think about everything that you do. If it were 100% on you, the bills that come and go that you don't know about, the things around the house that get fixed that you don't know about, the heavy things that are lifted and put in place that you don't have to worry about. Ask yourself, ladies, it scares me. All right. Snuggles is here asking for the link. You know you're not coming up, Snuggles, but good to see you. Okay, so go back to the statistics. Kevin said in this episode 50 years ago, 1/3 of women had to work. And what I was going to say is that, ladies, stop romanticizing being a stay-at-home wife. We have this idea that it's some type of pampered princess situation. That is not real. Stop watching social media and thinking that your life is going to be the life of someone that has multiple nannies and a chef and all of that. Those are moments in time. But most of it is the grind of, kids and, chauffeuring and chores and all of that. But those of us who prioritize family, we get a joy out of serving others. Women that stay at home, it is a sacrifice. Being able to live on one income. Maybe you have one vehicle. Maybe your trips are very modest if you have any at all. The kids may share a bedroom. All of these things while you're building your family, it's a sacrifice, all right? Now the statistic is 75% of moms have to work. So if you just look at the numbers on their face, ladies, I don't know, ask yourself why you think, Kevin used to call it the special snowflake. Why do you think if the majority of moms have to work, why do you think, or why should you be the exception? Ask yourself, all right? Rough House says, I don't see where to send a super chat. I'm so sorry, y'all. I changed some settings from the StreamYard, but I appreciate it so much. My other channel is Teachable Moments with Maggie. I don't know if that one's monetized, or you can go to the Wives Club on YouTube. That one is monetized, but thank you all so much. And I'll put it in the chat. You can go to YouTube, the Wives Club, if you want to support on YouTube. And you can also do Cash App if you want to. I'm just here to give back, but it's M Brown, and I'll put that in the chat as well. All right. So yeah, 75% of mothers today have to work. So ask yourself, why should you be any different? All right, let's continue on. You all are so generous. Thank you. All right, so we talked about this before. Also, Kevin said in this episode, and be wary of this, especially, professional women. The longer you wait to get married, the harder it's going to be for you to get what you want. This is probably the biggest misconception for a lot of modern women. We think we control the timeline. All right. So here's the thing, ladies. Men are the ones that establish relationship. Don't believe me? Find the man of your dreams. Go up to him and say, we go together now. You're laughing because you know that's not true, right? For a man to bring you into his own, to give you his name, his covering, his banner, his protection, he is the one that decides if you fit into his world. All right. Unless you're one of these women that buys the ring and proposing. I don't know why you're listening to me anyway. So when you delay serious relationship, and then you get to the point where now you're almost looking for it out of desperation, it's just going to be a much harder sell. And I actually encourage men, especially as a boy mom, to get the best option for them. And ladies, I say get the best option for you as well. Somebody that's very close to me, I was having a conversation with him, used to be an Airbnb guest while he was in school, and now he's gotten to the top of his field. It's been years, and he's struggling with dating modern women because they just want to be catered to. And he said something to me that it's going to hurt. But he said, the women at work that are the nicest to him are the single moms. But he was like, Maggie, I don't want to raise another man's kid. And I said, do not do it. I said, the reason they're so nice to you now is because life has humbled them. When they had the world as their oyster, you couldn't tell them anything. So you have the right to create your own family. Be kind to them and wish them well, but that is not your responsibility. All right, ladies? So the longer you wait, and then all the baggage that you collect along the way, it's just going to be harder for you. So do not listen to these women, older women or women in your family or social media or people telling you, oh, you got time, don't worry about it. You do not. You absolutely do not. It is a very different world dating in your 30s. I don't know, I was married, but it's a very different world trying to date and get something real in your 30s. And then 40s and 50s, it just gets even harder. All right. Let's see what you all are saying in the chat. Drea says, so if you are past your prime and have not partnered, should you just give up one adult child? So are you saying that you have an adult child? So the way I'm reading it, you already have a child. It's not clear to me, but that to me means that you would be older in years, probably in your 40s. If you have an adult child, adult to me means over 18. Now, is it harder for older women? Yes. Is it impossible? No. But here's the thing. You have to understand why men get married in the first place. Men usually marry because they want a family of their own. Now, ladies, we have to realize that men aren't just like, they don't like us as much as we want to think, okay? This is not I like you and you like me, and we're going to look into each other's googly eyes forever. You will grow into that, but usually when men marry, they have a vision for the role that the wife is going to play in their life. You need to know what that is, and are you up to that? So if a man is going to marry at this point in life, like I'll use Mr. President, he sat me down on the second date and he said, "This is what I'm going to do for you. This is the timeline I'm working with. These are my expectations. Do you accept or not?" All right. So if you're in the second half of life, ladies, we can't approach it like a wide-eyed young lady. We need to act our age and bring to the table what a mature woman with life experience would bring that is useful to the man that you want. All right, correct me if I got anything wrong. We have intelligence and earth saying, right. So the way women are moving, women aren't caring about the ring. If I understand you correctly, women are moving like they can get a ring when they want it, not that they have to earn it. Unfortunately, I would agree. And a lot of times it's too late by the time they realize they were really wrong. Condemnia says, absolutely not. Learn where you rank in the current market. Make the necessary adjustments for the type of man and lifestyle that you want to have with him. Great. I love when you all are giving each other advice as well. Thank you. Intelligence and Earth says, let me see if I can click on this. Women aren't trying to convince men to give them the ring because women don't care about love and family. Well, I understand, and it's difficult out here, but that's why I'm here as an older woman teaching the young, hopefully to get in front of some that could make that mistake. All right. And women only want things after they aren't really single, if they have kids. Yeah, Kevin talked about that in this episode, ladies. Here's the thing. When you look at your children, myself included, you look at your children and you see them as yours. But a man looks at those children and sees another man's child. So again, we have to stop looking through life the way we want it to be and realize how men look at it. And that's one of the things that Mr. President said. I had to wait until the boys were up and out. So it's been a long time coming, but I don't have the leverage of a woman that was childless like I was when I got married. So if I didn't want to have to start over, then you have to pair up young and keep your marriage together because it's only going to be harder second time around. All right. Okay, Drea, you said correct. I'm glad that helps. Rough House says date on her level. Interesting. Oh, thank you, John Smith. Thank you for confirming. Okay, so let's go back to Kevin's episode. Thank you all so much. Okay, so Kevin said again, average people marry average people. And what he's saying here, ladies, is that if you really look at what you offer, right? Take myself, I always fall on my sword. I'm an older woman. I struggle with my weight. I have 2 children, even though they're just about up and out, and then really co-parent well with my ex-husband. They actually went to live with their father for the high school years. But you have to really look at what you have to offer and how it stacks up to the man that you want. And that's why I say I'm happily average, because here's the other thing that I realized, ladies. We have to humble ourselves before life humbles us. Now, I've had people tell me, oh, Maggie, you're not average. You're amazing. You're great. You're this and that. I appreciate the compliment. However, I want to make sure that I don't get out ahead of myself and think that life owes me anything. You all probably have seen a couple clips that have gone viral, and MTR put in one of his thumbnails. You all know mediocre tutorials and reviews. I've done some old collabs with him. And he said, elder woman checks young feminist or something like that. And I remember I was laughing with Mr. President. I was like, I'm elder, right? But I actually embrace it. I think it's wonderful. I look forward to living as a mature woman now because I am pleased with where I am in life right now. On the flip side, and I have seen this with women who either lie about their age or pretend that they can compete with younger women or get offended if you call them auntie or mama or grandma or anything like that. All of that has happened to me. But what that means is, ladies, that's how the world sees you. That's how life will treat you. So if you're walking around thinking you're a 10 and you're not getting 10 results, that's going to be really humbling. It's a lot better, in my opinion, to say I'm average and for someone to compliment me and say, "Oh, Maggie, you look 35," but no, I'm 50. All right. So just be very careful about that. All right. On Instagram, Anthony says most women are not looking for a husband. They want sponsorship and funding in a form of a man they can manipulate. That's sad. And I have seen some women think that marriage is like, what do they call it? Like a retirement plan. And ladies, we have to understand and we have to accept the men are a lot more discerning now. Back in the past, if you were a young woman, you came from a good family, men would take the risk that you were raised right and you knew how to be an asset to them. Unfortunately, this is the mess that we have created. So now all of us, myself included, have to show up ready right now, like Mr. President says, and be consistent because the men are going to test us. Now, over time, yes, it's going to get easier, but you can't just expect it to be that way because I'm me. Condemnia is here. Oh, thank you for the $20. You guys are too generous. Thank you. He says your work on that latest in-person panel discussion was fantastic, by the way. Thank you. Those two feminists sitting close to the host were wild. Oh my goodness. Yeah, you all. If you don't know what he's talking about, you can go to the DAF show, Dr. DAF show, DAF. I was invited to be on a panel in LA in December of last year, a couple months ago. So we filmed it, and then I come home with my apron on and get back to work. And then it hits the airwaves after they've edited it, and you just never know how it's going to land. But some of you all found me that way, and I'm glad it was helpful. I appreciate that. Intelligence says everything is for a purpose and a reason. People who want family is the reason for those to get together and begin to live that family life. Absolutely. And elitism prevents relationship, not helps it. Whoever anyone is, they need a mate. If I'm understanding you correctly, ladies, we just need to find the best option that we have access to and stop thinking that that 1 in a million wish upon a star is going to be real. It's just not. All right. Honey Smile says, amazing advice, Maggie. Thank you, sweetheart. I appreciate that. Heavenly Destiny on Instagram says, the irony in that mindset is that it preserves youth all the more, in my opinion. It perseveres youth, if I'm understanding correctly. I'm not really following, but like Mr. President will tell you, ladies, we need to act our age, okay? So when that ship has sailed, that's fine. You adjust accordingly, all right? All right, so got some more comments from Intelligence on Earth. I'm going to keep going because I have a lot of notes I want to cover for you all tonight. All right, so average people marry average people. So Kevin asked in his monologue, he says, you know, because we're not going to qualify for that later in life, what makes you special? So ask yourself, ladies, and you know what? If you're really brave, ask the men that you admire and respect. Stop talking to women that have been perpetually single. I look at it this way. If I wouldn't trade places with them, if I don't want their life, I don't really let them tell me how to live mine. All right? So Kevin was saying, and I think some of you all have said in the chat, women want to get married as an option to not work. And ladies, if that's the reason why you want to get married, it's just not going to happen. Men are not looking to bring us on as a dependent just for giggles. That's not what this is about, all right? You're going to work. You're going to work for somebody, either your boss, or if you want to work for yourself, or you're going to be responsible to your husband, but you are going to work. And you have to know that going into it. Leave all of that pampered princess. Just get rid of it. It's not helping us. Yes, you will have moments of relaxation. Yes, you will have moments. I like to travel and do all of that. But every day you show up as a support system, or he will find somebody that will. And if that doesn't matter to you, that's fine. But I don't want you all to wonder, how did I get here? All right. Be prepared to work. So Kevin said, we overvalue what we ask for. And we've talked about this a little bit, ladies. You just have to assess yourself realistically and then look at what you're asking for. Are you asking for the top 1% or 0.1% of men to sit you down and then you travel the world together? That's not realistic. If you think about that man, we all have this, dream man in our mind, right? Mr. President is my dream man. But when I think about him and everything that he could have, where do I rank in that? That's why I say I'm the luckiest girl in the world, right? Hello, Kelvin. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate that. Okay, let's continue on. So Kevin said the top 20% of women qualify for the top 10% of men. Now, you all know Kevin had his statistics, and that just means if we use his rating scale, if you're an 8, 9, or 10, the top 20%, even those women are going to compete for the top 10% of men. So if you consider yourself average, like I'm a 5, trying to shoot your shot for a 1%er, I think it hurts us more in the end because we women are not built for rejection. Men have been getting kicked in the teeth since they asked that, girl in middle school for a dance and she laughed him off of the dance floor. Men are built for it. They can take it. We can't. So find the best option that you can in your prime years and get out of the dating market, all right? John Doe says, hello, Maggie. Your voice helps me. Oh, thank you so much for saying that. I worked on that a lot. I got some feedback about my speech, and I really tried to work on that. So I appreciate it when you all let me know. Okay. So especially for those of us, not play the video, especially for those of us that are average to cute, right? We need to lock it down even sooner. And ladies, here's the thing, of course, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And, I may be a 10 to my man, but I know what I look like, right? You all know when a woman walks into a room and everybody is craning their head. Oh my gosh, have you seen that before? Most of us, that doesn't happen. Most of us, it's like, oh, hey, how you doing? When you say I'm an 8, 9, or 10, ladies, that really means that you are getting paid for how you look. Most of us are not getting paid for how we look because we are not a showstopper. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can have a wonderful life and still get married and have children and have love and all of that. But just be very careful thinking that you are pretty, beautiful, or gorgeous when most people are average, and there's nothing wrong with that. All right. Divine says some women need to stop thinking the grass is greener on the other side. Yeah, that ends up just being a time waster, ladies, because you keep thinking, oh, the next one or the next one. He's not good enough. You start disqualifying them, just tossing men aside. And then you got a trail of tears behind you. You look up, you're 30, 40 and single. And the men that you disposed of are happily married with their families living their life. And you're on the internet with me on Valentine's Day. All right. So let's do better. Let's do better. Okay. Kevin said something that was really hurtful, and someone else mentioned this earlier in the chat. Women who are disgusted by their husbands. Ladies, we have to realize, how rare it is, especially in our community, that we are being chosen for marriage. So if you've chosen wisely and you have a good one, respect that man and hold on. I have told y'all my story. I have been humbled. It's funny, but it's not. It keeps me in line. I remember Mr. President was taking me out. We were going somewhere and I was in the car. I was in the passenger seat and I was just like loving life and it was great. And I just looked at him and I asked one of those idiot woman questions. And I was like, babe, what would your life be like without me? And without losing a beat, he's just driving without missing a beat. He was like, it'd be the same. Y'all, every time I tell that story, I was quiet for the rest of the drive. And he was like, what? He was like, somebody's going to take me up on my offer. I hope it's you. So if you have a good man, appreciate him the first time. All right. Men are waking up to being unappreciated and more willing to either be alone or find somebody else on their own terms. And so many women wake up on the other side of a relationship that could have been lifelong with regret that just eats at them. All right. Divine says there's nothing wrong with being average. Here, here. I champion that. All right. So Kevin said, and as I've told you all my story, he said, "You're not doing a man any favors being his wife." That one kind of hurt. But it's true, ladies. If we just rip the Band-Aid off and realize that what we are really asking men to do is take us on as a dependent. Ask yourself, ladies, we all have that girlfriend that wants to be included, but she never really has any money and it's always drama. Um, when we're asking men to take us on and cover our expenses and make sure that we have, the basics and then some, we are already coming in costing them something. So when you think of that, that's why I like to earn everything that I do. I'm always looking for ways to add value because our mere existence in a man's life costs them something. And we have to realize that, ladies, and not take it lightly because the way men look at it, that's days and years of their life that they're not going to get back. When you all are out here wanting these ridiculous $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 dates, it's not just throwaway money. Men look at the time that it took them to earn, whether it's a back-breaking job or an office that he can't stand and a boss that he doesn't like, they have to earn that, and they're not going to get that back. So make sure that as much as you ask for, and even if you're not asking for it, realize that, ladies, we are expensive to men. That's why so many of them, especially after divorce or whatever, they're just like, I'm fine. I got my peace. Men are so simple. They'll live in a cardboard box on the beach, have a beater car, and just be at peace. So if you want to be part of their world, you need to make sure that they are better with you in it, because just being there, it's costing them. Be known to you says, is this a space that is biblically supportive? I'm a believer. I have no problem saying that, but I try to speak from the perspective of an older woman teaching the young. And sometimes I do reference scripture. All right. Divine says, I believe the money aspect made a lot of women believe they're better than men. That's true. Having these big corporate jobs, and I can relate to that. Ladies, what we think is that job is always going to be there. And I think the pandemic, and I think, that great she session, or if you're like me, I work in tech, I've been laid off 5 times, just got another job, always land on my feet. However, you realize that companies are always going to do what's best for them. And when you're young and you really believe you're going to get that promotion and you really believe that you're part of the team and all of these things that they sell us, there's nothing wrong with working. I exchange my time and expertise for a paycheck, but you realize very quickly that when the company is better without you there, they will make those moves. And then you realize, man, all that extra effort and, all of this stuff that I was doing doesn't really matter in the long run. So I'm just saying, make sure that you are keeping the main thing, and don't let that big bonus or that big promotion or those letters behind your name fool you into thinking it's going to matter. All right. You're welcome. Be known to you. Absolutely happy to help. All right. Honey Smile says the hookup culture has skyrocketed. Yeah, that just makes me so nervous. Some women would rather run through a bunch of guys just to have the option rather than meeting the expectations of just one man. Yeah, and Kevin talked about that in this episode too, ladies. Here's the flaw and the fallacy with that. Because men control access to relationships, women, we control access to intimacy. Men know, and they know this from a young age, if they want to have the company of a woman, they have to be up to our standards. How many times have you ladies told a man he's dusty, he has bad breath, look at your hair, look at your shoes, all of the things that women do to embarrass men? Men have learned and life has kicked them in the teeth. So they realize, okay, if I want a girl like that, I need to get my money right. I need to maybe drive this kind of car, have this type of job. So men rise to the expectation to be able to have the company of a woman. And when men get to that point, especially if they have a lot of optionality, ladies who do not have what it takes to sustain a relationship with the type of man that you can have a hookup with or a one night stand with, you have one experience with a man or a short term experience with a man, and now you think that's where you belong. Now you think the average man that's really the best match for you is beneath you. And then what happens is you get to 35 and 40 and you have a string of one night stands or a string of hookups or being flued out or all of this foolishness. And then you talk to somebody like me, I'm like, well, where is he now? Well, what happened to him? And you have nothing to show for it. So just be very careful about that. Erin Laura is here. Thank you so much for being here. I think we figured out, Erin Laura, I did some settings changes on StreamYard. So I know they made an update and I turned something on that I need to turn off, but that'll give you all your wrenches back. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Oh, Divine says there's a video going viral where a woman said her husband is paying all the bills, but proceeds to say he isn't ambitious, and the panel was beside themselves. I haven't seen the video, but I've seen the thumbnail. Yeah, I think especially ladies, be very careful. Mr. President will tell you, you got one time in a row. And a lot of these women who take to the internet to humiliate their husbands, first of all, shame on you, but karma is coming back to them. And when you bring shame to a man like that, you're lucky if he keeps you around for much longer. Yeah, it's getting sorted. Thank you so much. Yeah, women who forego marriage and family, they end up becoming some type of companion, if that's a kind word. And that's what we're seeing. And sometimes we women think that if I'm just there long enough, he'll choose me. But not if you don't show up in the way that is useful to him. All right. Yeah. Public shame like that is horrible. Oh. And you almost fainted. I may have to watch that. But it's hard for me, all. This is not about me, but it's hard for me when I see women behaving badly. It's even hard for me sometimes to react to what we're going to react to in Kevin's content, because when I see the women and I hear the women call in, I'm just like shaking my head. Let's continue. Okay. So Kevin said, yes, some men don't want their women to work. But ladies, here's the thing. I always tell the ladies that I talk to, you need to know who you are, what you can bring to a relationship, because you need to be able to explain that and demonstrate that. You also need to know what you're asking for, and you need to know if it's going to be valuable to the man that you want. All right. Mr. President sat down and told me his expectations. I was able to say what I want. You can't just be going out on dates just to have a nice meal. You have to be really aware and asking yourself, is this a match, or is this just something to do? And if it's not leading you towards the outcome that you want, I say you need to exit with grace. I also say the purpose of dating is to determine if this is a suitable match for marriage or long term. If not, what are we doing? You're just wasting time that you don't have to waste. Okay. So again, Kevin said, especially today, it's not uncommon, ladies. The average family takes 2 incomes to survive. Now, yes, there are some men that can carry the family. That's a beautiful blessing. But again, most of the time, that is a sacrifice. Usually, husbands and wives work together. But the key is that you find the type of work and you do it in a way that prioritizes the family. So maybe that means you work closer to home, or you don't travel, or you don't go for that promotion that's going to add more stress. You work that out with your husband. All right. So, again, when you sink yourself into a lot of debt, or you take all of these years to go get that advanced degree, then you feel like you have to go make it worth the time and the effort that you spent. But the problem is, ladies, if we're being very honest, most of us, once we get the piece of paper, we don't really want to do that job. How many women do you know? I got a master's in this and social work, and you ask them about what they do, and they hate it. The thing that just boggles the mind of men. I'll speak for myself. I have a chemistry degree. And I was like, thought I was going to medical school, but I'm like, can you imagine me in a laboratory? No. So we got to be really careful about the effort that we put and then bring the leftovers and the tired part of ourselves to our men. All right. Honey Smile says, I saw a small panel of married couples, and a few of the wives admitted they have a good husband. They're not attracted to the husbands and withheld intimacy. God, that's the worst. That could scare men from marrying. That's true. Thank you, Demi. I will. That's true, ladies. And I think this is probably one of the cruelest punishment. Nobody wants to be denied. When you have a man, a husband who has sworn to protect and provide for you and lay down his life if needed for you, and then you play that game and you don't allow him access to you, I think you should be alone. It just makes me so, so sad. All right, let's continue on. So why should you get more than average if you are an average work woman and you're asking for more? You can say just because I want to, that's an answer, but is that realistic? Okay. Now, I'm going to take a deep breath and we are going to go and speak about the first woman that called in. Her name was Vanessa. And this could be an episode just in and of itself because there was so much in this conversation. Now, again, this video is work or wife. Are you hot enough for the soft life or something like that? But I've linked the actual episode in the description. You all can go listen to it on your own. I think it was up a couple weeks ago. So this woman called Vanessa called in. She's single, 29 or 7. Yeah, I think she said she was 29. And she said she was in the mixed group. But from the moment that she called in my opinion, it went left. We got Adrianelle on TikTok says, I want to be married again. Your son is leaving for college. What are my next steps? Oh, I love that. I love that you want to be married again. I would just say this, for second time around, ladies, we have to approach it as mature women. We have to understand and accept that older men are not marrying for the same reasons and with the same drive second time around. It's going to be on his terms. So you need to make sure that you're dating exclusively the men that are marriage minded. Find out what he expects from a wife at this phase of life and ask yourself if you're able and willing to give that to him consistently. You just got to be able to have that conversation. All right. So let's talk about Vanessa. Hello, Cynthia. It's so good to see you here. So Vanessa calls, and immediately within the first few sentences, she's dropping bombs. And Kevin was like, wait a minute. I'm going to need you to clean that up. And she was like, oh, all right. So he starts asking her some questions about working or not working. And the statistics on Vanessa, I think she was 29. She was a nurse, registered nurse. So she went to school, had a degree as a nurse. And she had a man that was interested in her when she was 21. He has an associate's degree. She's got a 4-year degree, I guess. At the time, he was working security. Now he's a truck driver. And she said that she broke off this 4-year relationship with him because he wasn't spontaneous. She likes to travel. She likes to do things. I saw somebody in the chat saying, women just want to travel and have all that fun. Ladies, we have to realize there's a fundamental difference between men and women. Men don't look at spontaneity the way that we do. The man, when he leaves his home, even at home sometimes, and he goes out into the world, he's always on. He's always scanning. He's always looking for the enemy at the gate. Men don't skip through life very carefree the way that we do. So men like structure, men like security, consistency. It is a security, like a security blanket for them. So a lot of times women say, oh, I want the man to, travel and do all these things. That's not how men are. You may have one or two that, may endure that with you. But if you're looking for a man that's just as spontaneous as you and your girlfriends on your girl trips, you will be alone. Men usually wear the same thing, eat the same thing, go to the same places. Men like routine and structure because that's what makes them successful. All right. So he's asking her these questions. Do you want to work or do you want to be at home? And she says, well, I eventually want to have my own business because being at home can get lame. There were so many red flags in this episode. Ladies, ask yourself, and I know this isn't every woman, but ask yourself the thought of keeping a warm and welcoming home, the thought of being nurturing, the thought of creating a space for your family to thrive. If that turns you off, if that seems boring to you, if that seems like suffocating to you, you're probably not cut out for marriage. A lot of marriage is routine and repetitive. Now, trust me, when you get to be my age, that's going to be a comfort to you. We went out last night and had a wonderful night, but even just going out and in the city and the traffic and the parking, like coming home, I was just like, whoo, that was a lot. Most of our dates are home dates, but you got to be really careful about that, ladies. She let a good one go. All right. Honey Smile says, unfortunately, we see a lot of scenarios where infidelity comes into play, especially with women. Too many women lie to their husbands about their children's paternity. That's just tragic to me. And it scares men from marriage. Yeah, it's true, ladies. I mean, you all have seen it. There's so much bad behavior out there. So all that to say, when you have a man that's taking you seriously, take him seriously because he will move on and find somebody that will get on his program. And men have good reason to not want to marry now. So we got a lot to overcome. All right. So this woman says, Vanessa says that she wants to be a business owner. She's working as a nurse right now, but she wants to be a business owner. And Kevin said, do you own a business right now? And she said, no. And you can see the gears turning. And ladies, this is one of the things that you have to understand about men. We can't just be saying stuff. We can't just be doing stuff just because it makes sense to us. The men that we are attracted to, men that are accomplished, men that are successful, are going to ask you those follow-up questions. They're going to be looking to connect the dots. So you really need to take time and think this through. So you want to be a business owner, but you don't have a business right now. Okay. So you work as a nurse. And Kevin asked her, what kind of business would you want to have? She's like, I don't know. My mind's not there yet. Ladies, we got to stop that. We got to stop walking through life just careless and carefree. And if you listen to this part of the call, she's banging pots, she's walking around, she's opening cabinet doors. He had to tell her multiple times, can you just sit down and have a conversation? And I don't think we realize, ladies, how chaotic we sound. And think about it. You got a man who's built something. He has his career, maybe a home, he has his structure, he has his routine. Why would he want to bring that Tasmanian devil into his world? This is the reason why they will have intimate time with you and they'll leave you over there to your own foolishness. So again, ladies, we really got to start thinking about how we show up to the men that we want. See, she's just saying stuff with nothing to back it up, no experience at all. Erin Laura says it's weird. They want a man with money to travel, but they don't want him away from home working all the time. Is his income, I lost it. Is his income going to come out of the sky? That's a good point, ladies. All this spontaneity and all the stuff that we like to do, myself included, we have to realize that not only does it cost money, but it takes men away from being productive. And they don't like to do that. All right. Excuse me. So all this is happening, and Kevin had to tell her multiple times, ma'am, can you just sit down and have a conversation? This call isn't just happenstance. I booked a session with Kevin Samuels, and some of you all know that was an investment. All right. So when you were able to get him on the phone, the way that women would just show up unkept, or walking around, or just chaos. We all remember, he made jokes about it, but kids up at all hours of the night, dogs barking in the background, Think about how we present ourselves to the world. Think about how we present ourselves to the men that we want to take us seriously. So that's something that, ladies, we have to really do a better job of. And what broke my heart is that Kevin told her multiple times, and I'm going to tell you all something. My man and the men that sponsor the work that I do behind the scenes, they will tell you they don't even want to have to say it the first time. They want a woman that is well versed enough to read the room and realize, okay, I need to come correct. I need to treat this with respect. I can't just be so casual and so familiar. Wait for someone to say, no, it's okay. Go ahead and do what you have to do. But if he's sitting down and focused and talking to you and you're doing everything and nothing, what does that say about how you're going to handle things that are really important in life? And I think that's another thing that we miss as women. Men don't just look at who we are and how we behave right now in the moment. They extrapolate that out for our decision making in the future. And this is where the I was young and dumb falls flat. You're not helping yourself, ladies, saying, oh, I was young and dumb, just excuse it. I'm ready now. No. Men say, okay. So I took you out on a date and you were doing shots because you just, wanted to enjoy yourself. So when I take you to the company Christmas party and I introduce you to my boss and they have an open bar, what is he supposed to expect that you're going to do? All right. So you got to be careful about that. Erin Laura says, I remember very unprepared. Treat these calls as if you have to physically leave the home, dress and behave properly. You all remember that. Kevin would have women on. Don't even get me started with the bonnet situation. It was horrible. It was horrible. All right. So, yes, absolutely. All right. So let's continue on. We're still talking about Vanessa because this one was such a masterclass, but not in a good way. So she says she wants to be a business owner because being home is lame. Red flag. Is she a business owner now? No. Red flag. Does she know what kind of business she wants to have? No. Again, red flag. So Kevin said, so you don't want to do what you went to school for. And I think we need to pause on that, ladies. What we choose to do, especially with our prime years, says a lot. And then what does it say about our decision making? If I decide to sink thousands of dollars, I don't have any debt, I paid my way through school, had scholarship. But what does it say about our decision making when you all are taking 50, 100,000 plus dollars in loans, getting that piece of paper, working for a few years, and then saying, you know what, I'm over it. That is not wise. Ladies, we can't let, these institutions or our family or, peer pressure make you just do something shooting from the hip like that. Because again, a man is going to look at, okay, if I give her the keys to the kingdom, if I show her all of the secrets, is she going to ruin everything that I've built? Just investing, just kind of throwing caution to the wind. So there's nothing wrong with course correcting. I did that. I have the chemistry degree. I decided, you know what? I don't really want to be in the laboratory. I want to make a turn and go into business technology. So, yeah, I went back to school, but I worked during the day and my company had tuition reimbursement. I went to school at night and let them pay for it. So I didn't have to take out any debt. So, ladies, again, if you're going to change direction or course correct, make sure you thought this thing through, because you're just going to show up as flippant to a man who has had to be tedious, who has had to be disciplined, who has had to have delayed gratification. So again, we're trying to come into their world and be useful to them. But if you come in all chaotic, they're going to be like, I don't want any parts of that. Sage says she will burn it down, and I don't want any parts of that. It happened to me. I'm so sorry to hear that. Another reason why men oftentimes are like, they'll just keep company with you, but bringing you into the inner world, they won't. They won't. And that's sad. But hopefully you all, when you really look at yourself and your behavior. Hopefully, this is helping you realize maybe why you are where you are. Okay, so Kevin starts asking her some more questions. We're talking about Vanessa that called in, the one who wants to be a business owner and she has no idea how. So she's 29 or something like that. And he asks her, do you want to be married? Or when do you want to be married by? And she said, oh, I don't really have a time limit for it. Maybe married by 35. Ladies, do not look at these women that have nannies and, injections and all these things and surrogates and thinking that you can delay, especially if you want to have multiple children, which is most of the time the reason why men are going to move quickly towards marriage if they do at all. All right. 35 is geriatric pregnancy. It just is. All right. You can do whatever you want to do. If you don't want to have children, that's on you. But thinking that a man who wants a family, because that's why men go through life and do the backbreaking job that they hate, is so that they can have a legacy that's going to outlive them. All right. When you're 35 plus and you're trying to convince a man that he can have the same life with you that he can have with the 25-year-old, you're fooling yourself. Is it impossible? No. Is it a lot harder? Yes. The best thing to do would be to approach it. First of all, don't wait that long if you want a family, but you need to approach it realistically and understand that you're asking a man to take the long way around the mountain. All right. When you're older and trying to have babies, there's all this stuff that comes with it. I had both of mine before 35, but there's bed rest, there's all these complications. Yes, do women have, healthy children after 35? Yes. But again, you're asking a man to hope that you're going to be one of the lucky ones. Why would a man take the harder route when there's somebody who is willing to be a wife and mother and give the benefit of her youth, especially if they both want children? So, again, just humbling ourselves and realize what we're asking for. And then when you're coming in at 35, what have you been doing for 15 years? And if it's just been, I've been doing me, then he's got to get you into cooperating with a man, especially if you don't have a track record of any sustainable relationship. That's another level of difficulty. So you see how we hamstring ourselves, ladies, by just doing whatever we want to do. Sage has a question on Instagram, says, can you please explain the psychology, I'm not a doctor, y'all, of why a woman will hate you but won't leave? I appreciate your answer. I'm not a psychologist. I'm just going to take a stab at this as an older woman. Women can resent you, but still want to benefit from what you offer. It's only human nature. People stay around because they're getting something out of it. Every relationship is transactional, all of them, even marriage. You sit down and you have a conversation. What are you going to offer as a husband? What are you going to offer as a wife? What do you expect as a husband? What do you expect as a wife? So people cannot like you and still want to be around you. We call them frenemies, right? We all have people in our circle now that can't wait for us to fail, are waiting for something bad to happen to us, but smiling in our face the whole time. So, I like to speak to women. I don't think I have a place to speak to men, but I think for all of us, if you know that somebody is not really there for you, you have to exit with grace. Show them the door. It's not going to get better. Just my thoughts, all right? Intelligence says women want to live a soft life and a certain lifestyle. Women don't want to be married. Well, for those that do, I like to try and reach out to those that want to prioritize marriage and family. Maybe they just haven't had the coaching or the example. All right. I understand that not all women are wives, and that's fine. It's just not my audience. Okay. So she says she wants to be married by 35. And of course, he asked her, are you talking, is your father, were your parents together? Is your father helping you? Who has been preparing you for this? She didn't really have a good answer. She just been doing whatever she wanted to do. And that's where the The issue of the 4-year relationship came up. So this woman, I guess she was in nursing school, maybe he was in trucking school, I'm making it up. But she had a man from 21 for 4 years, and she broke it off with him. And Kevin said that in this episode, ladies, most of the time, you've met your husband. You just thought you were better than him, and you blew it. So she had a 4-year relationship with all of her difficulty, with all of her masculine aggression and dropping bombs and cutting him off. And he had to tell her multiple times to sit still. She just kept doing whatever she wanted to do. All of that defiance. You had somebody that was willing to work with you. And he asked her what happened. She said she cut it off because he wasn't spontaneous and she wanted more out of life. And long-winded version, he asked her, where is he now? And she's like, oh, we still talk. Kevin told her, you need to humble yourself, apologize, and go back to that man. With everything that you got going on, he really cared about you. And the first thing out of her mouth, well, it goes both ways. Both of us have to want it. And he was like, absolutely not. You need to crawl over broken glass. And you could just hear through the phone how offended she was that I got to do something to earn this. I don't know where Vanessa is today, but I thought about that. And I'm just like, there's so much wrong here. This is the reason why she's alone at 29 and probably will be at 39. Ladies, we have to humble ourselves before life humbles us. And if you think that you're going to have it your way, Burger King, just stay single. Sage says, yes, you see the Valentine's flowers in the back. Yeah, that's one of the bouquets. I put that there. It's Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. We celebrated last night, but I figured I'd come on here with you all. All right. Hopefully you have a Valentine. But yeah, I did put those in frame. All right. So let's move on to the next lady that called in. Vanessa she was a piece of work. All right. I think he asked her, how long does it take to get married? Please turn off YouTube. It was just all over the place. She said the man wasn't good enough. She wanted more income. She wanted the lifestyle. I'm spontaneous. And it's funny to me, these women who say they want all of these things and they keep passing good men over. When you look at their life now, they still don't have those things. All the women that I know who say, I expect this type of lifestyle. And so you had a good, hardworking man that you thought you were better than. Are you living that lifestyle on your own? Are you traveling? Are you having, multiple $100 dinners and doing all that? No, you're going to work and coming home like the rest of us. So you say you can do all bad by yourself, but really, it's not like we're living that life on our own and a man is going to downgrade us. Hypergamy is real, ladies. We are naturally attracted to men that have something to offer. So look at your life, objectively and say, wow, if nothing changes for the next 10 or 20 years, is this what I want to do? Do I want to be on the internet with Maggie on Valentine's Day? All right. Let's continue on. He asked her, have you been trained to be a wife? And she was like, no, I don't really have those skills. He said, I'm not noticing any femininity. And she was like, I know, I've never had that. And then he asked her again, well, what are you doing about it? And it was just so painfully obvious. But ladies, we got to be careful about this. Just saying, I know. Someone says, you got a temper. I know. People tell me that all the time. That's not a good answer. Self-awareness means that we know our issues and we're actively doing something about it. Because again, ladies, we can't just be saying stuff. Because if someone tells you, you know what, you get a little bit loose when you've been drinking. I know, it happens all the time when I go out. That's a huge red flag, ladies. So he's asking her, you got this like masculine energy. What are you doing about that? And she's like, well, I apologize afterwards. I try to catch myself. Oh my God, ladies, it's not okay. And he even called her out on that. He said, so you are basically doing damage and then just thinking an apology is going to make it better. We have no idea how off-putting we can be. We have no idea how many ways that we could turn off people, but we're just oblivious going through life. Like, yeah, I said, I'm sorry. I know I'm working on it. It's not good enough, ladies. All right. So be very careful about that. I think that nurse and that truck driver back in the day, that would have been a beautiful relationship, but she thought she was better than him. All right. So the other thing that stood out to me, she had this man when she was 21. He was 2 years older than her. So 21 and 23. That's how we did it back in the past. It's not uncommon. Small town girl, we would get married right out of high school, right out of college, but you built a life together. Now there's this thought that I can do whatever I want for as long as I want. And then when I'm ready, I'm going to go cherry pick that man. But Kevin said in this episode, men don't usually start being able to sit a woman down until their mid 30s. All right. So when you are a young women especially, if you are a young woman and you are not with a man that is already established, if you are dating somebody or in relationship with somebody closer to your age, understand that those are going to be the lean years. Those are going to be the sacrifice years. Those are going to be the years. I don't want to share too much with someone very close to me. Like, those are going to be the years where you make little sandwiches and go to the beach for a picnic or whatever. So many women miss out on that. And then they look up and 10 years later, and that man that was working in the grocery store or in trucking school or whatever, now he's made something. Now you say, oh, I should have been his wife, or I could have been his wife. Well, you weren't there when he was building. And loyalty is very important to men because they have to know that you're really here for me. If I lose it all and I have to start over from the beginning, are you going to be there? And that's a really hard sell when you're just talking about it. But when you are willing to be a support system to him as he was building, you're going to be the first one to benefit because it's only natural. All right. Oh, goodness. Let's continue on. So Kevin was giving her feedback, and she said, I understand that now. She continued to move around, and he told her that she was very aggressive. She was still slamming things around, and I just wanted to throw my hands up because I'm like, I hope that woman went back and listened to that call because it was really hard to listen through. He asked her, he's like, give me some femininity, give me something to work with. All right. So the other thing he said, you're educated and you're still aggressive. That's the other thing we have to be careful about, ladies. When you go get these big jobs and these big degrees and these big promotions, my man, Mr. President will say, don't tell me you got a PhD because I'm going to be expecting PhD behavior everywhere. And I'm like, boy, here we go. But what that means, ladies, is you cannot sell that you are excelling and you are above average over here in this space, but you can't keep a clean home. You can't, in every other aspect of life that is useful to the man that you want, you're failing. And a lot of times that's the flaw that we make. We think the accomplishments that are important to us are also going to be important to men. That's not. So you got a big job. That's great for you. How is that going to be useful for him? All right. So be very careful touting around that big degree and then you're horrible with money. You're in a lot of debt. Your car is barely holding on. It's worse when you say you got all these accomplishments, but nothing to show for it. It would be better for you just to say, look, I'm struggling. All right. Poppy says, real women build with a man and not move in after he's complete. Yeah, ladies, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to find him at the finish line. Stop believing that you can wait for him to do all the work on his own and then you're going to just show up. Because what that man has proven to himself is, I can do this alone. What do I need you for? That's why when you see average women with an above average man, it's usually because we hitched our wagon early and held on. All right. Aaron Laura said, Kevin's, I'm a PhD, drops in my head rent free sometimes. Yeah, be very careful about that, ladies. Be very, very careful. You're welcome. And Janelle on TikTok. I appreciate you. Okay. So Kevin said all kind of red flags. She's still slamming things around. And, Kevin said that he tells men to be making 3 times their income. And so this was a 20-something-year-old man or 30-something-year-old man at this point who's making well over $80,000 as a truck driver. And so the point is that, ladies, she missed her opportunity to hitch her wagon to a man who 10 years in the future was going to be in a position to actually give her the life that she says that she wants. And that's the saddest thing for me. I see this often where women, we are so short sighted. We look at what a man can do right now, especially when you're young. You're watching this foolishness online, thinking that you're supposed to have trips and trinkets and purses and shoes and all these expensive dates, and you don't know how to just be a good woman to a good man, be a support system to him. Remember that his purpose comes first, and you're there to take the little things off of his plate so that he can manage those big rocks. That is a way that you can add value, and that is a way that you solidify your position in a man's life. Because when you get to this age, you're not going to get those years back. And all that stuff that you did, ask yourself, how is that useful to the man that you want? So you've been to every continent. That's great. You like to travel. That's great. How is that helpful to him? All right. So be careful. Be careful about what you prioritize. All right. Divine says Kevin tried to help Black Love. They didn't want to listen. I know he's gone, but his words still lives on today. I miss him so much. So Kevin told her, you had your man. You had him at 21 and you messed this up. He was a normal man and now he's doing great, making $90,000, with bonuses as a trucker. But he told her, your ego and your pride messed you up. Oh, it makes me so sad, ladies, but we see this a lot. Don't let your ego, don't let whatever you think you're supposed to have immediately, right now, mess up the best thing that you can have. I'm telling you, we're all going to age, God willing, but even with all the nice things, and I do have a lot of nice things, but the memories, the life that you built with your husband, with your man, that's what you cherish as you age. When you get to my age, the women that are single, in my experience, they're not looking for shopping sprees. They're not looking for expensive dinners and shoes. At this age, they want somebody to care that they exist. They want somebody to check on them. They want to be able to go out into the world and come back and someone ask if their day was good or bad. That's what you're looking for when you get to this age. But the only way you can have it is if you've put in the time and you've earned that place. All right? Let us continue on. So let's not blow our opportunities, ladies. So the next woman that called in, I'm looking at my notes here. We need to be mindful about saying, well, it's not my fault. Make sure that you use your dating years the right way. And if you're average, be very careful insisting on high value. Okay, so moving on. Kevin said something interesting about women working as wives in relationship. He said even way back in the past, in the hunter and gatherer stage, women weren't just laid up, pampered princesses while the men were out on the hunt. The men were hunting, the women were still gathering. We still had to work together as a team to survive. All right. So be careful. I know we all have these modern conveniences, but be very careful about thinking that it has changed the way that women and men are better together. He said that this middle class is a new invention. We used to have the wealthy and we had the poor. And let's tell the truth, all of us, especially if you're watching or listening to me, a generation or two ago, we're all from the poor, right? Some of us have built ourselves into the middle class. But if you don't come from, generations of wealth, we've had to build something, and we did that together. All right. The next woman that came in, I can't remember if she was Jamaican. The next woman that called in, I can't remember if she was Jamaican or where she was calling from. But she had a question about, men and options and women and working. But what struck me in the note that I took is he said, "You come from a poor country. Why would you even ask about women working?" And this was tough, but it was good. So, for all of us, when you come from humble beginnings, why would you even expect that you're going to go from zero to the top? I know there's one Sierra, there's one Russell Wilson. But for the overwhelming majority of us, when we don't come from privilege, you look at your parents, my parents, immigrant parents, maybe you would come from working class or whatever your background is. That's who we are. So we have to stop thinking that we're going to skip to the front of the line in less than a generation. The generations, we want our children to do a step or so better than us. But I think this is where, I know we say, what is it, reach for the stars and maybe you'll catch the moon. But I think this is where a lot of women end up single and empty-handed into their later years because all they can see is that top prize. And you think everything else is beneath you. All right. So especially, I would venture to say, those of us that come from humble beginnings, get the best option that you can and stop worrying about what rich people do. Stop worrying about what other people do. That doesn't have anything to do with me. There's no reason I should be trying to emulate somebody who has a live-in chef and multiple nannies and houses all over the world. That's not real. And that's going to keep me disconnected from, my community, my man, my real world. All right. Thank you, World Class, for the love. I appreciate that. Okay. So the next woman that called in, Alva, she was 28. She wants a high value man. Who doesn't, right? My man will tell you the way to get a rich man is to be there before he's rich. It's just the truth. Excuse me. So Kevin starts asking her some questions. And she was attractive, and I think she was even small. I can't remember what size, but single digits. She was small. But the truth comes out. She has a child. Ladies, again, remember, to you, that is your child. To a man, that is another man's child, all right? We don't look at it the same. So Kevin starts asking, how long were you with the father? And her answer really struck me. I took a note. She said, he was my boyfriend. I got pregnant, but he wouldn't commit. I am so tired of us doing things out of order and then expecting traditional outcomes. On what planet do you think, ladies, that you can pop up pregnant and don't tell me it was an accident because you do what you want to do? On what planet do you think you're going to get pregnant and then expect a man to commit to you after you're pregnant? This is why we wait to marry before we carry. Now, look, if you have a child, you're going to have to realize that that's really going to hurt your chances and you do the best that you can. Sometimes that means you have to wait and raise that child and try after the kids are up and out. But again, it goes to our decision making. And again, it goes to us just saying stuff. Listen to that for a minute. I gave a man the greatest honor and then expected him to commit to me. Ladies, you got to stop that. All right. First of all, do not have children unless you are married. Full stop. I don't even know why we have to say that. Do not expect that you having a child is going to force a man's hand. I'm going to tell you, like Mr. President said, only wives are mothers. And I know that hurts. And I asked him, what do you mean by that? Men create mothers because they choose the wives that they want to have their children. So when we get out in front, ladies, when we think we can just do it our way, when we think, oh, I'm just going to have a slip up and have a child and he's going to look at me differently, you're wrong. It's not going to work. And then any other man that comes after that, you're going to have to explain this. And then you're going to say something like, well, he was my boyfriend. I got pregnant and he just wouldn't commit. Don't do it, ladies. You don't need a souvenir from a relationship. All right. Wait to get married. In my case, even if unfortunately the marriage ends in divorce, you have demonstrated that you require marriage before you give children. And that says a lot about you. And then, even if the marriage does not last, because you gave children to your husband and he wanted to be a father, assuming you all planned it together like we did, he will still be a stand-up father because he wanted those children. Those are his children. And you're not asking for a commitment after the fact. Even if he's not the husband to you anymore, he will always be the father for those children because he chose you to be the mother. All right? I know it's tough, ladies, but I'm just telling you, this is what the men are saying. Ash has a question. I don't think that's a real question, but good luck with the millionaire. All right. Thank you, Erin Laura, for the support. Oh, yeah. We don't want to be in la la land because that it just hurts us. It just hurts us and it lowers our chances. Okay, let's continue on. So Kevin was telling her, look, you're attractive, but what are your looks worth? And I know it hurts me to hear it too. But Kevin's basically trying to prove a point when he's asking her, what are your looks worth? And I know, ladies, we want to think we're a 10, but if you take the emotion out of it, he's basically saying, yes, you are an attractive woman, but you're coming with a lot of baggage, with a lot of history. Does that overcompensate what you're asking for? So you're a woman, you don't want to work, or you'd like the option to not work. That's great. So you're coming not only yourself to be a dependent, but you're bringing another man's child. Why should a man who is able to create his own family and sit his wife down and have unlimited access and unlimited discipline to the children that he creates instead of having to have this mixed Brady Bunch kind of home and, can I do this or not do that? And then there's another man in the picture lingering around. Why would he want, after all the work that he's done, why would he want to create that life for himself? So ladies, you got to ask that. And she realized, she was like, yeah, you're right. And he said, you're asking outside of your looks. And I know it's hard, but don't just think about it as, yeah, I got a pretty face or I don't have a pretty face. Is the pretty face worth the chaos that you're bringing to the man that you want? It's a tough question because that is another man's child. All right. And she started laughing. He said, you're laughing because it's true. And you know it's true. So if we know the truth, ladies, we can't just like roll the dice and hope nobody's going to really look too closely. That's why a lot of times women try to hurry you up and make you move fast and lock it down before you realize, there's a lot going on here. But ladies, men are taking even longer. They're vetting even longer if they're even considering marriage at all. All right. So don't do anything that's really going to hurt you. All right. Kevin said something else. We look at women that we think, oh, I want that, or I should have that, or how is she better than me? Why does she have that? He says, you don't know what's going on in that house. I'm going to tell y'all, having a high value man, having a man of a certain caliber, you don't get to just do whatever you want to do whenever you want to do it. Sometimes people look and they're like, oh, Maggie, how do you have a man like that? How are you so lucky or whatever? But I'm going to ask you, what would you say if your man wanted to know your comings and goings? What would you say if your man wanted you to open up the finances so he can look and see what you're spending and not spending? What would you say if your man wanted you to run big decisions by him I don't collaborate with anybody on my channel that I haven't run it by Mr. President. All of these things, simple to me, but ladies, if I say things like that and you just cannot imagine, you got to really ask yourself, are you cut out for what you're asking for? Because a man is not going to bring you into his world and relieve you from the stresses of life if he doesn't have some type of say so. And men look at that as protection. So for me, it's wonderful. I crave that security. But especially, ladies, when you've been single for so long and you really haven't had anybody to answer to, you've just been doing your own thing, it's going to be even hard for you to course correct. That's why, even if the marriage didn't work out, men look at women who got married young. I've had two relationships, been in a relationship since I was 18, marriage, and then now. You have a track record of working with a man. You have a track record of putting the family first. You have a track record of being a support system. You know what it's like to be told no, or we can't go here, or I want to stay in, or we don't need to spend that, or whatever it is. So, again, be careful looking at other people's lives and thinking you want what they have. Are you really willing to do what they do to keep it? All right. Neo Moses says, Amen. They just want the title without the truth. I understand. All right. So, what you can do, ladies, is ask. I'm going to tell you the truth. Women that have secured the relationship that they want, they're not going to stop what they're doing to help bring you up to speed. But if you do have the opportunity, you can ask. And if they'll be honest with you, take the information and ask yourself, am I up to the challenge? All right. So Kevin said, you know what? You bring in all this to the table, and he's asking, if you got married and the kids were in trouble and you had his kids and then this other kid, could he discipline them all the same? And she starts beatboxing. Well, I don't believe in this. And he said, just stay single. Just stay single. Ladies, men are men of action, and they're not trying to decipher or read through the tea leaves and figure out what I can or cannot do, especially in their home, especially when they're responsible and the buck stops with them and they got to walk on eggshells because that's somebody else's kid. Mm-mm, mm-mm. No, he told her, just stay single. All right. The other problem with the single mother, it's one thing to have another man's child, and that is a constant reminder to the man that you want. Trust me, going through it myself. Even though I was married, my man told me he didn't want a blended family, so I was going to have to wait until the kids were up and out. Can't argue with him. Those are his rules. If I want to be in his world, I have to abide by his rules. The other problem with women that have been perpetually single and then you went off and had children on your own, you have been judge, jury, and executioner for so long. He said, you've never really had to cooperate with a man. So not only is there this extra child, then it's your attitude. Don't talk to my child like that. It's all that comes with it. Why would a man choose the hard way? You got to ask yourself. All right. So he said, don't go out there doing what you want to do and then try to retrofit a family. Because again, circling back to the family friend of mine who says, the single mothers at work are the ones that are the nicest to me. I'm like, yeah, because life has kicked them in the teeth and they realize now they don't want to do this on their own. I have heard women say you don't need both parents, you just need one. You absolutely need a mother and a father. That's why we were created the way that we were. All right. And unfortunately, a lot of the women that have messed up on their own are the ones that want structure and tradition more than anything. Ask yourself why. Why aren't they out there at my age still saying, turn up, hot girl summer, let's go out? Those are the main ones. Tired, complaining, lonely, want a man. Don't do it. Don't wait till you get to my age, ladies, all right? So he said, just get a guy that you can work with and build something together. Ultimately, you will be so much happier. Believe me, all right? Stay under his protection, especially for young ladies. This one woman called in, and I don't know, she might have been African, and she was asking Kevin for what to do to get the type of man that she wants. And he pushed back, and he's like, look, you come from a tradition. You need to run it by your father. And I understand, very well. When we go outside and we start asking a lot of the truth is, ladies, a lot of women would call and they would ask Kevin questions because they were trying to crack the code. I want a man like that. So let me find out what they want. Anytime I'm out with Mr. President, when I have my events and the ladies get a chance to talk to him, oh, they're peppering him with questions, do you have anybody that you mentor? And, all this stuff. But you got to be very careful because sometimes you can get ahead of yourself if that's not who you are, if that's not where you come from, if you really don't know how to move in certain circles, you waste time trying to pretend that you're somebody that you're not. Swim in the rivers and lakes that you're used to. There's nothing wrong with a country boy being with a country girl, with a small town girl being with a small town boy, with that nurse or that teacher being with the truck driver or the plumber, and building something so that when you get to this age, you all have something together, something that means something. Stop thinking that you're better than good men, because the saddest thing for me is when I talk to women my age, all of them have a regret about somebody. I should have been so and so's wife. I could be living in that house. I woulda, coulda, shoulda, some version of that. But when they had the opportunity right there, they didn't take it seriously. Thank you for the love, big stags. All right. So, I think the last one that called in, she was 20 something, living at home with her mother, asking questions about how to get a man. She had weight that she needed to lose. Believe me, I deal with that too. But she was $80,000 in debt. I think she had gone to school and then maybe gotten an extra degree. And he told her, you have signed your own death warrant. And that's hard to hear, ladies. But when we have these, Kevin called them useless degrees. But when we go to school just because we think we're supposed to, or somebody said so, or we thought it would be fun, or that's the next logical step, or whatever. And then you get out in the world and you realize, I don't really like this nursing. I don't really want to do social work. I can't stand being in the office. Be very careful about that, because now, again, you're bringing all this baggage and asking a man to take that on. Why should he take that on when he has the option to have someone who's untethered with all of those things? So we start asking her questions. Were you raised to be a housewife? Were you raised to serve men? Ask yourself, ladies. Our upbringing is our upbringing. So ask yourself if you were really prepared for what you're asking for. Because if you think you're just going to show up and wing it, you're wrong. I think the only reason I have the outcome that I do is because I had a very traditional upbringing. I took the college and corporate route, and then when life humbled me, I was able to remember how I was raised. But if you didn't have that, find a man, or let a man find you that you're willing to work with him and he's willing to work with you, and you all put something together and build your family and then move on. Don't put yourself in a position to compete with women who have a stability that you don't have, an example that you don't have. I think it just hurts us. And like I said, we're not built for the rejection. All right. He told her also to do something about the weight. And he said, if you're so intelligent, you need to do something about that. So again, ladies, we got to be very careful bragging about our accomplishments, because the men are going to look us up and down and say, okay, you know so much. Why can't you discipline yourself? Why can't you push back from the table? Why can't you get outside and walk? Why can't you pay your bills on time? Why can't you keep a clean car? Whatever it is. All right. So we got to be really careful bragging about our accomplishments. But when you look at everything else that is of value to the men that we want, we're not doing so well. All right. He said, men are not walking wallets. We are supposed to be a helpmate to the man. Remember what I said, Mr. President said, the man comes first, then his purpose, then we are a helpmate to him. The way that we get what we want is to be useful to the men that we want, ladies. It's not just showing up and being cute and sitting there. All right. Aaron Laura says, wow. Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of our women, they haven't heard that. It's like they just kind of stumble up on it and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. All right. Again, Kevin said, you probably met your husband in high school or college. So, ladies, especially if you're listening and you're in that age range, that young man that has a plan, if he's interested in you and he's a good one, hold on. I'm telling you, my young students that I taught to that are in their 20s that are locked into their husbands, they're getting on their timeline. If he says, hey, we got to cut back on spending here, or hey, we need to do this, they are right in line, because when the kids are up and out and they're at this age, then they'll be able to enjoy some of those things. I'm telling y'all, when I was younger, vacations were at Six Flags. We made it work. Everything was used or secondhand. So don't look, especially as somebody who's now at a different part of life where things are a little bit more comfortable and I can do some things, and think you're supposed to have that immediately. That's not how this works. And that's why Kevin said we have so many women in their 30s and 40s that are single, because you're waiting, or you think you're going to find something perfect. There is no perfection, right? They say the grass is green where you water it. So don't become bitter. That's what Kevin said. Kevin said at the end, he said, women become bitter because they had it and they lost it. When a woman has never had that opportunity, we're still hopeful. We are still like bright-eyed and thinking, not in a childish way, but in a way that's like, I can't wait for an opportunity to love and be loved. But usually the women that have something nasty to say, that are always trying to cut someone off at the knees, if they were honest with themselves, they had an opportunity for a different life, but they didn't choose wisely. All right. So the last thing I'm going to leave you all with, Kevin said, and this one just cut me to the core. Do you really want to win, or do you want to look good losing? Sometimes I say, do you want to win the battle, or do you want to win the war? And, circling back to that first woman, Vanessa, when he said, you need to go back and apologize and make it right. You met your husband. That was the one that you were supposed to be with. And the first thing she said is, both of us got to want it. Sometimes we get so determined to be right, to get somebody told, to put somebody in their place, to let you know how I can clap back, how much greater I am. How many times do we see women acting badly? You all see me on these podcasts. How many times do we see women having outbursts, going off, whether it's in public or a restaurant or whatever, because they gotten so offended and they got to let the world know how upset they are. And you have that moment, that one moment where everybody saw you go nuclear. And now where did that get you? What did that outburst or that bad behavior get you? So you look good losing, or you can actually win. I think winning is better. All right. So thank you all so much for being here. Let me check the chat really quick. I know there was a lot going on. This one was a little bit longer. Again, I'm Maggie, the substitute teacher. You all can find me on all platforms. I know my YouTube, I made some changes, but I'll get that fixed. I make food and femininity content. I miss Kevin every day. He was so gracious to me in that session. And I want to keep the work going and the legacy alive. So I'm with you all here on the Wives Club, usually once a month after his channel shows a montage of his content. I like to react to it as an older woman and hopefully give you all some perspective that is helpful. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Destiny says this is a great listen. I'm happy. I'm happy that it's helpful. I'm really happy that it's helpful. Thank you, Thundercat on TikTok. You love me in Somerville, South Carolina. I love you back. Thank you all so much. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Andrell says, what's the link to Kevin's video? You know what? Let me see if I can find it, and I'll put it in the chat. Let me see. I don't want to mess this up, y'all. Can I copy? Yeah, I can copy and paste it. All right, I'll put it in the chat because you asked. Let's see if I can paste it. Hopefully I'll get my moderators set back up again. There you all go. And here it is on Janelle on TikTok. There's the link you all can go watch it on YouTube. All right. Let me say thank you to the donations that came in, even though I messed up my settings. Thank you, Condemnia, for the $5 and then the $10. Thank you, Suave D, for being a member for 12 months. He says, hello, Maggie. God bless. Thank you. You've been supporting me for a year. I appreciate that so much. Condemnia again with the $20 coming through. Erin Laura has been rocking with me since my channel started, monthly support for 43 months in a row. I am so grateful. We're going to get you guys back your wrenches. I'm so sorry I messed it up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for liking the live stream. Condemnia again with another $20. He says, free game for women looking for a husband. Come to that man and present him with the ways you will save him time and money. I love that. Of course, this will be easy if you actually like and respect the man that you desire to wife you up. That's some great advice. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. And thank you for the $20. So generous tonight. And then Kelvin joined as a new member. I don't promote it much, but I do have memberships starting at $5 a month on my channel. If you all want to just give continuous support. But I just love to give back. This is my way of the older women teaching the young. And I'm so grateful for the men that listen and support. So good night. Happy Valentine's Day. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so grateful. But yeah, so my cooking streams are going to be on Fridays, and then I'll be back with you all next month. But I post something every day. Y'all know I'm going viral right now, so more of that to come. But I just wanted to take some time to react to Kevin. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and love you and leave you here. And I will see you all again next month.